Well, since you and I have worked together on this particular issue for decades, and sometimes doing things that need to expand the of it to get back to that original intent, I think it's quite appropriate that you're sitting in for Senator Durbin at this hearing. So today we turn our attention to an important issue that's unfortunately doesn't get the attention that it deserves. Government transparency is fundamental to good governance. The Freedom of Information Act is supposed to help ensure this transparency. Congress has a responsibility to ensure that both the letter and the spirit of FOIA are being faithfully carried out by administrations of both political parties. Transparency brings accountability. FOIA is our nation's primary transparency law. It gives the American public statutory right to request government documents. Americans have the right to know what their government is doing. Before Congress enacted FOIA, much more government waste, fraud, and abuse could have remained hidden from public scrutiny. This committee has a bipartisan history of confronting FOIA challenges and strengthening the public's right to know. In 2016, a bipartisan effort led by FOIA Improvement Act of 2016. The chairman's already said how he, Senator Cornyn, and I have worked to get that legislation enacted, but there are still significant issues with the FOIA system. Federal agencies seem to be determined to disclose as little as possible. I want to acknowledge that the Department of Justice recently published FOIA guidelines for federal agencies. That being said, I'm disappointed that it took more than a year for the administration to issue those guidelines. I've heard similar promises before with no real improvement in transparency. So when I hear any administration make promises of transparency, I've learned to take it with a grain of salt. Unfortunately, there's still delays and backlogs in FOIA requests. The Government Accountability Office found that backlog requests increased 18% from 2019 to 2020. And then going back to 2012, backlogged requests have nearly doubled. Another Government Accountability Review of FOIA found that agencies use what's known as B3 exemptions. That has doubled since 2012. Instead of increased disclosures, federal agencies have doubled their use of this exemption to withhold information from the public. And proactive disclosure, the Government Accountability Office found that 25 federal agencies didn't report a single proactive disclosure. Now, how is that possible? There's clearly substantial room for improvement, so I look forward to this hearing those recommendations today. Finally, it's not just the public who can't get answers to questions. Last year, I asked the Department of Veterans Affairs for information about allegations that a VA employee leaked potential marketing sensitive information and then retaliated against whistleblowers. Nearly 1 year later, I still haven't received a single document, and that's just one of many examples. Another might be Crossfire Hurricane, where the President Trump, January 19th last year, declassified I don't know how many documents. They're still in the Department of Justice, not declassified, and I asked for those months and months ago. Whether it's congressional oversight, which we have a constitutional responsibility to do, or whether it's through FOIA that's available to everybody in the United States to get information. It seems to me we need to make this work because there's everything about the American government that the public's business ought to be public. Now, I know there's exceptions like privacy. Obviously, national security, you don't tell your enemies what you're going to do, and our intelligence gathering. And if people can add more, but I think that covers practically everything that shouldn't be available for the public's knowledge. So the public's business ought to be public, and that's what FOIA is all about. That's what congressional oversight is all about. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.